Let's make my New Mexico stitch quilt pattern using 10-inch squares. For this pattern, you will need 42 10-inch squares and 1 yard of background fabric, yielding a 54-inch by 56-inch throw size quilt. Or you can use 70 10-inch squares and 1 1/4 yard of background fabric, yielding a 63-inch by 80-inch twin size quilt. I am using Homebody by Maureen Cracknell and Deco Stitch Volcanic, all from Art Gallery Fabrics. Now let's get started. With your background fabric, you will cut 168 2.5-inch squares for the throw size, and for the twin size, you will need 280 2.5-inch squares. All of these measurements will be listed down below in the video's description. Then with your 10-inch squares, you will subcut 4 2.5-inch squares and 1 7.5-inch by 8.5-inch rectangle. Repeat this step to all of your 10-inch squares. Now let's create a quilt block. For one block in the same print, take 4 2.5-inch squares and 1 7.5-inch by 8.5-inch rectangle, plus 4 2.5-inch squares in your background fabric. With either your print or background 2.5-inch squares, draw a 45-degree line from corner to corner with a fabric marking tool. Place the background and print 2.5-inch square right sides together and sew directly on the line that you drew. Cut a 1/4 inch away from that line that you sewed and create a 2.5-inch half square triangle. Or as a bonus, to avoid fabric waste, draw a 45-degree line from corner to corner with a fabric marking tool. Then draw another 45-degree line a 1/2 inch away from that first 45-degree line. Then sew directly on both of those lines. Then cut right down the center to create your 2.5-inch half square triangle for this pattern, and a much smaller half square triangle that you can use for a later project or piece backings if you like to have fun with that. But moving forward, whichever you prefer, create a total of 4 half square triangles. Then with those half square triangles, place them together like so, and sew them together with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Then take your 7.5-inch by 8.5-inch rectangle and sew it to the right side to create a 8.5-inch by 9.5-inch rectangle. Repeat these steps until you have a total of 42 blocks for the throw size or 70 blocks for the twin size. Now that your blocks are completed, you will lay this pattern out in a brick style pattern. For your odd rows, you will start with the half square triangles on the left side, then rotate your next block and repeat the pattern throughout the row. Then for your even rows, you will start with the half square triangles on the right side, then rotate your second block around and repeat this pattern throughout the row to give it that brick style layout. For the throw size, lay your blocks out in a 6x7 block layout or a 7x10 block layout for the twin. Sew your blocks together to form rows, and lastly, sew your rows together to complete your quilt top. And here is what my New Mexico stitch quilt top looks like all finished. For the backing, I am using a coordinating print from within the collection. Then for the thread choice, I'm going with glide threads in the color Mocha. And here is what my quilt looks like all quilted out. For my long arm quilters, I designed a new pattern since I wanted a more modern tribal design, which I will link down below in the video's description. But once again, 42 10-inch squares and 1 yard of background fabric will yield a 54-inch by 56-inch quilt. Or you can use 70 10-inch squares and 1 1/4 yard of background fabric, yielding you a 63-inch by 80-inch twin size quilt. I do hope you have enjoyed today's tutorial. If you could please take a moment to hit that like and subscribe button, Hit the notification bell so you can be notified for your next amazing quilt project.